Hello to all Johnson Controls employees around the world. I'm your host, Keith Blessland, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our groundbreaking podcast that is reshaping the realm of organizational change management. Today, we're driving into the dynamic world of leadership. We'll explore how leaders can inspire their teams through transformative periods, future-proof their approaches during uncertainty, and effectively manage change. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Stacey Ashley, who will share her expertise on visionary and intentional leadership. Now, just let that sink in for a minute. Visionary and intentional leadership. Dr. Ashley is known as the leader's leader, is a distinguished leadership visionary based in Sydney, Australia. With a unique ability to simplify the complex, she provides practical, strategic advice to executives navigating uncharted territory in today's fast-paced business world. Dr. Ashley is dedicated to future-proofing CEOs and their organizations, emphasizing the importance of intentional leadership that goes beyond the mere placeholder of roles on an org chart. She believes and has a fundamental responsibility to inspire and innovate, encouraging them to embrace change, develop their teams, and cultivate a culture of capability and exploration. Her impressive accolades include recognition as a LinkedIn top voice, multiple awards from Thinkers 360, and 14 international Stevie Awards, underscoring her impact as a thought leader in this field. With a focus on creating high-performing executive teams and effective leadership coaching capabilities, Dr. Ashley is committed to empowering leaders to navigate complexities and enhance their influence and impact. Hi, Stacey, and welcome to Johnson Controls Organizational Change Management Podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, I think you've done an amazing job already, Keith. I'm just so excited to be here, really looking forward to our conversation, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome, and we are really, really excited. I'm also joined by my co-host, and I am delighted to introduce Kristen Muller. Kristen is the Associate Director of Global Leadership Development. Throughout her tenure at Johnson Controls, she has held many roles in design, development, management of programs in both sales and technical space. She is a current board member for Women in HVAC, leading the educational committee, and is an active member in the organization. Voted as one of the top 20 women to watch in HVAC 2024, Kristen is passionate about learning and providing tools and resources for long-term success. Hi, Kristen, and great to see you. Would you like to introduce yourself to our viewers?
I mean, she said it best. You did a fantastic job, Keith. So thank you for the lovely introduction. I am beyond excited to be here today with both of you. Can't wait to hear what we talk about today.
Thank you. And honestly, it's a privilege for both of you, all three of us, to have this conversation. So let's dive straight into the first topic of visionary leadership. Stacey, you describe yourself as a leader's leader. How do you define visionary leadership in the context of organizational change? And what qualities must leaders cultivate to inspire their teams during transformative periods?
Let's get in there with a great big question to start with. So I think visionary leadership for me it's really maintaining, not just having a vision, which of course is important. We need to be steering towards something, and particularly in a change management or transformation context, we want to give people a level of, understanding that yes, we have a direction, we have a purpose, we're going somewhere, and let me tell you about it. So the vision, of where we're going. And of course, that will change a bit over time because we know the world moves on. And so we've always got to be refreshing that. So visionary leadership is about having the vision, circulating, articulating it, but it's also maintaining the tension between now, things we have to do, activities we've got to perform, transactions we've got to complete, milestones we've got to meet, and keeping that horizon perspective. So always having that sort of one eye on the horizon and keeping the concept of future in mind. So the decisions we make today, of course, are going to impact the future. And so if we make them with a perspective of today alone, then perhaps they may not be the same decision that we would make if we had a balance between today perspective and future perspective. So I think visionary leadership is always maintaining that tension between today and tomorrow, so that you're really setting yourself up for success in both spaces or both periods of time, rather than making a decision today, perhaps, which is really going to make the future hard to achieve. So that would be the first thing that I would say. So visionary leadership is about being creative and all of those sorts of things, but it's also about making sure that we've got that balanced perspective. So we're not all about today and we're not all about tomorrow, or one or the other, that we actually keep a blend of those things. And in terms of the attributes, to, be able to keep our people inspired and on the journey with us towards that vision, I think the first thing that I would say is that, we've got to share it. And I think one of the things that I encounter when I'm working with leaders is, yep, we've told everyone up front, this is what we're doing, which is amazing. And then there's kind of a bit of silence after that. And I think it becomes really easy to forget that we've got to keep revisiting it. We've got to keep reminding people, this is the journey we're on. This is why we're doing it. This is where we're going. Yes, we've made a little bit of an adjustment. This is why we've made the adjustment, because, it gets us closer to where we want to be. I have this conversation that I have with people, which is, when you start to get tired of sharing the message with your people, you're just about at the point where they're starting to get the message, and they're starting to really understand what we're doing and that sort of thing. So we really, really got to keep that visible sort of line of sight and open communication between where we are and the vision. So that would be the first attribute. Really stay on message, be having the conversations, whether it's a big conversation in a town hall or whether it's a one-on-one conversation with people you see on a meeting or you see in the corridor or whatever it is. That's the first thing. I think the second thing that I would say is, in terms of inspiring people to sort of stay with you and that sort of thing, is that really personal piece. How am I showing up in this journey towards the vision? How am I leading? Am I being the leader that I would follow? And so really being conscious of how you contribute to the current and future state by simply your presence and, the experience that other people are having of you. I think that's such an important thing. And often, again, when we're very busy and we've got massive portfolios and huge objectives, it's easy to not just make that little bit of space to reflect on our leadership and the impact that we're having, not just on individuals in the moment, but also the impact that, maybe helps them decide what kind of contribution they will make today. Was it a great experience they had with you and they're feeling energized and really focused on the vision and how they can contribute to it? Or, did they not love that experience, that moment when they passed you in the hallway, or they had that 5 minutes in a conversation? Did they not love that? So they're not feeling like, I'm going to give that extra effort today because, hey, my leader doesn't appear to be. So I think I'm going to stop there because I'm conscious of time, but I think those are two things: the connection of the vision, between now and the future, and the tension between that and circulating the message. And the second one being that personal, how you show up as a leader through the lifespan of a transformation. And that's one of the most challenging things, I think, is, we all have good days and not so good days, but we also have to take responsibility for how we're showing up the contribution we're making, how we're leading, and the experience that others are having, because it will impact how they then show up and contribute.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And if I look back myself and think, it takes a tremendous amount of energy and work for our leaders to be on message week in, week out, month in, month out. At Johnson Controls, we have the Your Voice, and there's a clear message from our employees saying we need to know more about our strategy. Tell us what our strategy is. And so every month, our leaders, our CEO, is delivering that message endlessly. This is our strategy. This is our vision. But boy, does it take a lot of time, effort, when we often think our executives should be out, with our customers. But actually, we're also their customers. So to share their vision and that energy and passion is hugely important. I'm going to pass you over to Kristen now. Kristen?
Perfect. Thank you. I love the thought on keeping your eye on the horizon as well, Stacey, but we all know between here and there, we're going to experience some rapid changes and definitely some uncertainties for sure. So what strategies do you recommend for CEOs to future-proof their leadership approaches, especially when we have to navigate those rapid changes and potentially some uncertainties in the industry?
Look, there's so many things that you could do. Let me kind of narrow it down, because we want to give people the opportunity to kind of go, yes, I could take that away and actually do something with it. The most remarkable thing to me, I think, that I've really observed and recognised and researched over the last few years around this space is, we know, for example, the World Economic Forum have said, more than 50% of the workforce need to be re-skilled by 2030. There's another sort of 40-something% of the workforce that need to be upskilled. So the majority of our workforce, over 90%, need to be, having either upgraded skills or completely new sets of skills, within the next few years. And I think the same goes for CEOs and other executives. We can't rest with the skill set that we have and the experience that we have. If we want to stay relevant, current, be leading organisations that are also relevant and current and sustainable, we have to continue our own growth. And that can be skill growth, but it could also be growth in things like perspective. Am I bringing new experiences into my world as a CEO so that I have different ways of thinking and different ways of working with people? Am I looking to other industries to go, what are they doing? How could we use that in our industry? Are we exploring proactively the opportunity to just to really, turn something on its head and disrupt it? So I think there's kind of this deliberate growth element that I think is essential for future-proofing CEOs, and of course everybody, but CEOs, because people are going to follow, like, what are they doing? But also, my sense is the world is changing faster than it ever has before, and it will continue on that trajectory. If we say, I'm great, yesterday was a great day, last year was a great year, and we don't grow as leaders, the world moves on without us, and it will be very, very quickly that we no longer have something to offer, because, maybe we are not across how we can leverage AI or the latest, agentic AI or whatever comes next. There are so many things that we need to embrace in our own growth to keep us, at the forefront and not trying to play catch up. So that would be the first thing that I would say in terms of that future proofing space. The other thing is just the concept of proactivity. What do they say? Hope is not a strategy. So just hoping things will work out, hoping that we are on the right trajectory, hoping that we have the right capabilities in our organisation, hoping that we've got the right technology or partners or the right market share. None of that is a guarantee of the future. And so being proactive, always asking the kind of the probing questions, what if, what else, what next, I think is absolutely critical to the future proofing or future creating space. Yes, we have to take care of today, and CEOs have got to make sure that we've got all the foundations and we've got all of the capabilities for today. But it's always, again, it's the eye on the horizon. We're always going to be looking at, what are we going to do next? What are the opportunities? What are the options? Where do we go from here? And I think that that's got to be a continuous conversation, not that they just have in isolation, but that they're out there having that conversation, with all of the smart people around them, wherever they happen to sit in the organisation. In terms of then the change and uncertainty piece, I go back to visibility. I think it's absolutely critical for our leaders to be visible. And they can do that in so many ways. Yes, they can be in meetings and that sort of thing. But, I've worked with a couple of CEOs and they said, I can't speak to everyone everywhere. I'm like, great, shoot a 2-minute video on a Monday morning and send it out to your entire organisation so they can see what you're doing, what you're focused on, and they feel connected to you and you are visible. And that visibility creates certainty that you are leading them. So we mightn't be certain about the context, we mightn't be certain about the economy, we mightn't be certain about a lot of things, but let's create certainty in your leadership. And every leader can do that by visibly leading, which is not them just doing what they need to do, but making sure everybody knows that they are doing what they need to do. So, connecting with people, being visible in ways which are about how they message to people, how often they message to people, creating opportunity for that feedback loop, all of those things that let people know I'm here, and I'm leading you, I'm actively leading you. We're not just passively sitting by. And I think that trust that builds, the trust that I know you're leading me, creates a more safe space for people to operate in, which is not the same as I have all the answers, because I don't necessarily have all the answers as a leader, but you can trust that I'm going to be working with all of the great people in our organisation to find the right answers for us as we move forward, and in a proactive way, not in a fingers crossed, hopeful, hope it'll all work out way. Let me pause there for a moment, because
No, I think that's great, Stacey. I think, being visible and creating that feedback loop also creates some additional learning on their part. And learning is growing. And we have to see what we did last year, you're right, but also what can we do next? What can we do better? And that creates a better environment for everybody, because, so we do have to upskill. Each and every one of us has to learn, and we have to grow over time as the world continues to change. So all fantastic points. Keith, I'm going to throw it back over to you.
Thank you. And I love, Stacey, what you've just said around constantly upskilling, because technology is changing that quickly. As JCI moves to autonomous buildings and smart buildings and the technology that it's going to take, we need our service technicians to be able to install, manage, service, sell. So all of those skills they're going to have to learn and grow with in the coming decade is going to be hugely important. But Stacey, let's talk a little bit more. You've shared your insights about visionary leadership. Now let's shift a little bit to intentional leadership. And you emphasize the importance of navigating with intention. Can you elaborate on how intentional leadership influences the success of change efforts within organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me use an analogy. I find this works best. So if I'm leading a transformation activity, there's generally a program of work, and we've thought it through. We know how we're going to roll it out, and we go through all the steps. And depending on where that happens, there's more or less of a balance between the technical execution, if I can call it that, and the people orientation and taking them on the journey. When I talk about leading with intention, it's like the difference between, let's say I'm doing my workout and I'm going to do bicep curls. So I've got my dumbbells and I'm going to do my bicep curls. Now I could just go through the motions of doing bicep, like I'm doing my bicep curls, great. And I'll get a certain level of outcome. But if I am focused on, I am going to exercise this particular muscle, this is when I'm going to contract it, this is when I'm going to lengthen it, and I'm really, really ensuring that all my energy and focus is directed intentionally to the outcome I want, which is to build those strong bicep muscles, then all the research shows us and all the outcomes show us, I'm going to actually get a better outcome, one that is much, much closer to my intention and focus than if I just do, bicep curls, but I'm really thinking about something else while I'm doing it. It's the same with leadership. So I could be leading a transformation activity. And many people do, and they do it very well. But my question would be, if it was my intention to not just lead the transformation effort, but I was intentional in terms of, for example, how I show up every day. So how do I choose to lead this transformation effort today? That's going to have an impact on how productive I am, how engaging I am, how the experience of others is when they interact with me. If I was intentional about not just leading the transformation, but the experience that I want my people to have as they go through the transformation, then I'm going to focus on that more. The experience that people are having, not just let's tick off the things in our project plan. Yes, we've done all the steps. So intention creates focus. So it's about understanding what's important here and intentionally leading those elements. So it's not just the overall outcome of, yes, we've got through the transformation, but what else do we want to happen? What is the state of the organisation, for example, at the end of the transformation? Do we want a whole lot of people that are fatigued, change weary, that sort of thing? Or is our intention to equip our people with great skills at mastering change so they can, feel accomplished, they can feel energized, they know they've made a great contribution and they're ready for, whatever the next thing is, because we know change isn't going away or transformation isn't going away. So intentional leadership is being very purposeful and focused on the things that matter, not just going through the motions, if you like. And it's easy to go through the motions because leaders have a lot on their plates. They have big portfolios, lots of conflicting demands. But I think it's being more conscious about how you want to be a leader. So leadership is not just a doing, like transactions and actions and conversations. It's a being. How am I going to show up with purpose and focus and intention in my role as a leader? And in fact, I think if you look around at people that you might have come across who you would say they are a good or maybe even a great leader, they don't have a switch that turns on and off. They're always a leader. They're being a leader in all aspects of life. And so I think that has a lot more, in some ways, authenticity, because it's not a switch and it's not just a doing thing or a knowing thing. I know a lot of people who know a lot about leadership doesn't actually make them great leaders because they're not embracing being a leader. They can talk about it a lot though. And so intention is that real directed purpose and focus on what matters as you are being a leader. Does that make sense?
No, I love it. And I'm just blown away trying to think about everything you've shared there. I mean, we often think with maybe an ERP implementation that leaders show up to the steering committee and think, that's it, I've done my role. I've been given an update on the progress. We're on time, we're on budget. But really, how do you then go beyond that? How do you actually go, execute quicker, not just in an agile kind of format, but just keep it going, make it sustainable. And I think that's where that intentional leadership comes in for me, be able to drive sustainability and adoption rather than just deployment. Yes. Stacey, thank you. I'm going to sort of hand over back to Kristen.
Thanks, Keith. Stacey, you hit the mark on that one for me. It's how you show up every single day as a leader. We just did a session on this last week with some of our high potential leaders as well. So it definitely very timely for me. On another subject, though, with leaders, I have a very big soft spot in my heart for emerging leaders because they are our next generation of leaders. We need to grow and cultivate that group. Very much so. So as a recognized thought leader that you are, what insights or lessons learned would you share with emerging leaders to really help them start to effectively manage change and start to influence others in their organizations as well?
Yeah, I like this. I'm totally with you on that, Kristen. The more that we can build those amazing leadership foundations in our early and emerging leaders, the better set up they are, and therefore we are for the future. A lot of it is the same. I think as individual contributors or early leaders, often people don't feel like they can make much of a difference in a big transformation or a change piece. And I disagree with that. Because the very first choice they have is, how am I going to show up? How am I going to participate in this? Who do I choose to be, in this process? And that alone can be, really impactful for the people around them, because I may not have chosen this change. I may not even agree with the transformation we're doing or the reasons for it, but I can still choose to be the best version of myself as we go through this. I could choose to make it a learning opportunity. I could choose to help other people out. So that would be the very first thing I would say. What's the choice you want to make about how you're going to contribute and participate here? And then from there, I would encourage people to have conversations. What are other people experiencing, or what are their thoughts about what's happening and how they're, do they want to be in or out and that sort of thing? Because then you can maybe ask them some great questions that open up their eyes to how they're going to show up. And so that's a potential opportunity to kind of influence others, not by telling them, but rather by asking and listening, which I think is one of the absolute power enablers of any leader is the ability to ask a great question and then truly listen to the answer, because you get so much knowledge that then you can use those insights to inform, where do you go next, or what do you do next, or how do you help next. I think the other thing that I would say is, in terms of, say a transformation activity, is to keep themselves informed, like really understand what's the purpose here, to ensure that what they're doing is actually contributing to that purpose. And that could be a big stretch from the very strategic purpose down to what I do every day. But I think it's a great opportunity to kind of think through what's the connection here, because maybe there are some good questions to ask about, how does this thing that we're doing here, how is that actually helping? Or could there be something else that would be really valuable here? So not being welded to a particular agenda, but asking those thoughtful questions because you don't understand the connection. So you'll either get information which helps you to understand the connection, and you can go, yes, okay, this is truly valuable. I see how it's connecting to the purpose of what we're trying to achieve here. Or actually, it just confirms this activity is not adding value. Let's do something that adds value. Then have the conversation with their leader. This is what I've discovered. Where do we want to go from here? How can we do something that is more useful in the bigger scheme of things, if that makes sense? So again, I'll pause because I could talk about this all day, but I think they're probably the two things that I would start with. Really be reflecting in an ongoing way about how they're choosing to show up and contribute. And the second one was about that really great questioning, listening, not just in terms of working with the people around them, but also in looking at what are we doing versus the purpose. How does it connect?
Mm-hmm. I mean, your passion is just permeating through the computer today. So I appreciate that, because it's easy for our emerging leaders to take a little bit of a backseat, right? Take a backseat. But I hear that you're saying have that courage to stand up and ask the right questions, but then also have the extra courage to say, this is not providing value. What could we be doing instead? So that, I think that's a huge lesson for our emerging leaders, that it's okay to step away from the wall, right? It's okay to take a front seat here and have a voice. So that's a very powerful message that I'm going to walk away with today. Keith, back to you.
Yeah, Stacey, we could talk all day, but unfortunately we're going to start the wrap up here. So I'm just going to pass it back to Kristen to bring it home, Kristen.
Fantastic. So Stacey, I certainly am leaving, like I said, with a number of items today that I'm thinking, I have to say that. I have to make sure that we touch on that. So I want to thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, being open and honest with all of us, your strategies, navigating rapid change, uncertainties, not only insightful, but action oriented. And I think that was the goal of today as well, is to walk away with some actions that all of our leaders could take back and start implementing immediately. So I have zero doubt that our listeners are going to find some value in your recommendations. And again, I want to thank you for spending some time with Keith and I today.
Oh, look, just a pleasure. Like I said, we could talk for hours and hours and hours. I'm really glad to hear that was useful. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Stacey, I echo everything that Kristen's just said. I can't thank you enough. It has been fantastic. This is what we want to hear from you. This is what our listeners want to hear from you. This is what our leaders want to hear from you. And I've taken so much away from this. So thank you very, very much for joining us today, and greatly appreciate it. Do you have any final thoughts before I say goodbye?
Look, I think the big one, and this is the one that I share often with the people I work with, whether they're early leaders or whether they're, much further into their leadership career, is leadership is a choice. And it is all about the choice that you make every single day to turn up and be a leader. So think about the choice and choose wisely for yourself.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you. Join us next time on Johnson Controls Organizational Change Management Podcast, where transformation drives results.